I'm asked to speak on the issue of textile reclamation in the secondhand market, like I recently did at Evergreen Brickworks. And sometimes I also do a video series for Humber College, Humber Infused, in their business classes. I usually talk to fashion business classes, usually who brings me on. And I thought I would do this class for the public because it's important information. Because there's this misguided virtue signaling kind of fashion sense that I'm seeing becoming a big trend that will actually ruin the world. And the thing it's ironic because the ones that have adopted this fashion sense are doing so thinking they're saving the world. So there seems to be this misconception that the manufacturing sector of fashion and the reclamation sector of fashion, or the secondhand economy portion of the fashion industry, so when we're getting to the end of life of a textile, is a competition. And many eco warriors, especially younger eco warriors, are pushing the agenda of less consumption, as if it's the manufacturing that's the problem, or the quantities we're manufacturing that's the problem. And that is really misguided. It's a really misguided trend, and it's unfortunate because for a few different reasons. But for the first thing, you vote with your dollars, and sustainability has become such a trendy thing right now, and you've done a good job making these demands on the fashion manufacturing sector, which, yes, is one of the highest polluting sectors on the planet. We're seeing a lot of inhumane manufacturing workplaces, like things we saw in Bangladesh that have caused massive calamity. It's heartbreaking what we're seeing in some of the textile manufacturing industries, fast fashion being one of the biggest perpetrators of this kind of unfortunate behavior that we're seeing globally. And that's what happens when you have a global economy, is that businesses then start to look at their operations globally, which means you go where the labor's cheap, you go where the rules are lax. And that's when you end up getting Bangladesh tragedies, which now they're trying to regulate that. I'm sure it's getting better, but it could be getting better faster. And many designers are putting resources into being more sustainable. And you know what? Many times buying designer is sustainable. Okay, sure, maybe the dye processes aren't the best and there's things that they can improve, but it's slow fashion, which is the absolute opposite of fast fashion, right? It's just that slow fashion is usually out of people's price point. It's out of their range. And our solution to that is the secondhand economy, where the prevalence of thrift stores. But it used to be that there would be, you'd have to search through 20,000 square feet and go through 15 thrift stores to find 4 good pieces for your wardrobe. And somebody who needs to shop, it's one thing if you're a hobbyist and you like to do this because the treasure hunt is fun, that's great. But that's a very small, very niche demographic. The majority of people that are buying secondhand is because they have to. And maybe they're aspiring to get to the place where they can purchase the wardrobe they want brand new. Not quite there yet, so they're just starting their professional journey or whatever. They want to look the part. And thrift stores make this accessible. And there's a new trend in thrift store that's happening that's really upping the game in terms of how they curate inventory. So it used to be that you walked into a thrift store and the majority was crap and you were lucky to find 2 or 3 good pieces. Some people don't care because they just don't care whether it's not 10 years old or 15 years old. It doesn't need to be last season for it to be okay for you to use, and I get that. But it's really changed now, where now when you go to these thrift stores, you do find last season stuff or maybe the season before. It's no longer 3, 4, 5 years old like it used to be. Maybe in part because of our consumption has increased, but you're getting some really good stuff there now. You're not walking out with a wardrobe that looks like it came from the back of your grandma's closet. You're actually walking out with a great professional wardrobe, many times brand new with tags still on it. You'd be surprised. So they've changed. Thrift stores have changed. And professionals like myself are working really hard to end the stigma that only broke people or hobbyists thrift, and to end the perception that when you go to one of these vintage shops, you're going to find the majority crap and you'll be lucky to find a gem. I want people to know that you can now go to a vintage store and with $150, you can walk out with a Donna Karan wardrobe and feel amazing going to work Monday morning. The secondhand economy cannot exist without manufacturing. Because if everybody listened to the eco warriors that said stop buying clothes, if we all listened to you, if we stop buying clothes, then there's nothing left in the thrift stores. And after a while, those would wipe out. And then what would you do? We'd be back to the beginning, spinning fabric to create a new industry, because it starts from the beginning, which is the preparation of textiles. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. So what you're actually doing is killing both sectors at the same time with that attitude. Instead of getting mad at manufacturing, getting mad at whatever, why don't we get mad at the lack of technology? Let's get mad at industry, foreign owned industry Goliaths that have perpetuated these little stigmas and perpetuated the stagnation and have fought innovation, because innovation would have usurped their export model and their business model, and they didn't want to have to innovate. So let's get mad at lack of innovation here. Because if we had the green tech in place that we could have had 20 years ago, if we had that in place, you can buy all the clothes you want, and you know what I mean? It wouldn't matter, because then there's a recycling methodology that you can turn it into furniture. You can turn it into whatever. This isn't technology we need to invent, by the way. Europe's been using this stuff forever. And what I'm seeing now are colleges and universities taking these huge grants to study machines that Canada already had, and their whole industries went broke, and they're doing all this fake bullshit research. Literally, a lot of this is such bullshit. And they're just wasting money researching bullshit, when Europe, I could call Europe tomorrow and say, hey, I want to turn t-shirts into, I don't care, maxi pads. And they would send me the line of machinery to do it. So Canada, with this pretend research and all this money that the Liberal government, by the way, is blowing on all of this crap, could have actually been innovating the sector, could have actually brought in the machines. And instead, we're just spinning our wheels and taking our time. So our problem isn't, okay, the manufacturing, yes, is polluted and it could be getting better, but we're seeing brands that are doing that. What is it, Peggy Sue, Eileen Fisher? It's just that it's out of most people's price point still. But it'll get there. And in the meantime, you can do better by buying better, by going to secondhand stores. Like I said, where $150, you're walking out with all the Lululemon you want, all the Donna Karan you want, all the big, better brands. And instead of spending $3,000 on a pair of Louboutins, you'll get them for $800. You know what I mean? So you can, as you're getting better financially, your wardrobe can reflect that, and that's okay. But here's another issue. So because we've all taken on this virtue signaling, rah, anti-manufacturing, which will kill the economy, because here's another thing I should mention. The job multiplication factor, which means every job that exists supports, other jobs. Every job has a different ratio, okay? But you figure, if you're working and you're making more money, you're spending more money, you're taking the bus, you're going to coffee shops, you're making a lunch for work every day, you're buying more clothes, right? So all of these things put more money in the economy. In the garment sector, one job supports 66 other jobs. So when you destroy garment manufacturing, which is what hipsters are trying to convince you to do by telling you to stop buying clothes, what they're doing is they're literally killing the economy. And then killing the second-hand economy, because now we no longer have stock to put in these thrift stores. So not only are you killing the economy that way, but you're also undoing all the hard work I've been trying to do, which is to end the stigma that you only find crap in thrift stores. Because I want people to understand that Lululemon, Donna Karan, and Chanel are waiting for you in those thrift stores. But when you hipster guys walk around looking like you just fell out of a trash can, and say, I bought this thrift. Well, of course you did, obviously. You know what I mean? But then people look at you and think, well, if that's what's waiting for me, I'm never going to pull off. I don't work in a kombucha stand. I work in a corporate office. I have to have a certain standard. I have to wash my hair every day. So I can't pull off those hipster fashions in the corporate world. So if you walk around looking like that and saying, this is what I got at the thrift store, isn't it great? You're killing me. You're killing all my hard work. And this is where the hypocrisy comes in. I'm going to be a little bit mean here, but this is a bit of a tough love situation, okay? Because here's the other issue. So I know what's in these thrift stores because this is my business. So I know what's in these thrift stores, and I know there's amazing stuff in there. So how come y'all walk out with the worst possible things they have? And recently I was in a space that was full of these eco-warrior hipster types. I was full of them. And I'm looking around and I realized there's a competition going on over who looks like most shit, whose clothes are torn and tattered the most. And there's this ego thing of like, you want me to absolutely know you bought secondhand. So the crappier and older and more dated the thing is, the more I know that that's like some moral virtue. So the shittier you look, the better human being you think I'm going to think you are. Right? So and you guys don't realize that that's all steeped in ego, and by the way, also steeped in scarcity thinking. That's a whole other video. But steeped in all this ego, because you're too cool to look cool, right? So for you, you're so cool, you could look like shit, and that's great, and that makes you a wonderful human being, even though what you're doing is actually creating the poverty you claim to abhor. But that's a whole other economic conversation. But walking around with this thing, and then you look at somebody who buys a Chanel or a Yves Saint Laurent, and then you will say, oh, they're just full of ego because they have to have the Chanel. Well, you have to have the shit. So it's the same difference. Whether you're trying really hard to look amazing or trying really hard to look like shit, that's an ego trip. And that's a reflection of some kind of statement you're making. Except the hipster Trashcan statement is doing nothing but hurting the secondhand economy, and it's hurting the economy in general. That's my rant. Have a good day.